There's not many creators in the modern era that I feel like I need to talk about their books as soon as they release. I mean, obviously it's different with Rom V because we have Motherbox News, specifically dedicated to talking about the New Gods. But with the book that we're talking about today, I haven't been able to stop thinking about it. Not only is it relevant to the times that we're living in, but also it's a really good setup for an indie comic that I think that everybody should be reading. For the majority of the comics creators that I follow, I'm not expecting every book to be genre defining, but with Dennis Camp, it's a little different. I believe that 20th Century Men by Dennis Camp and Stepan Morian is a genre defining book, cementing it as one of the top books within this generation.
You can look over at Dennis Camp's work alongside Juan Frigeri on The Ultimates, which is really the best comic of that line, and arguably the best book Marvel is publishing. Wait, how did I get here?
On top of that, we also have Absolute Martian Manhunter that Dennis Camp is writing alongside Javier Rodriguez. So Dennis Camp's future is looking bright. But there was one book that was on my radar at time of announcement. Assorted Crisis Events puts the perspective on normal, everyday people as they experience a crisis level event. Not only does the setup sound so interesting, but also everybody on the creative team is knocking it out of the park. It's written by Dennis Camp with art by Eric Zawadzki. The colorist is Jordi Belair and the letterer is Hassan Atsmain-Allahu. Just to put it into perspective, this issue just came out this past Wednesday and I'm talking about it on Saturday. Usually I'll wait for the trade to come out and then think about writing a script for it, but I couldn't stop thinking about this issue and I just wanted to make a video today. My hope is that you'll leave this video wanting to go and pick up issue 2 or contact your store and see if they'll order issue 1 for you. The purpose of this channel is to incentivize others to start reading books they wouldn't normally pick out. And this book in particular is the perfect example as to why I make videos. But before we get into this issue, let's hear a word from our sponsors. The story begins with a page that shows that a clock is sitting at the bedside and because of the loud explosions falls on the ground and cracks. It's then that we're introduced to the protagonist of this issue named Ashley. The narration states, "This is how the world ends. It's World War III or IV out there today. Every week is a new apocalypse. I can't keep track. A few months ago, it was a blinding sun and a water crisis and ninja motorcycle societies. Before that, a virus killed off 99.9% of the human population. Things grew wild on the concrete. Over the winter, it was, what else? An unexpected ice age. From my window, I watched a doom party go out. Or was the ice age 2 years ago? Like I said, I can't keep track." These first few pages are a masterclass in panel-to-panel storytelling. It's not only able to show the motion in the comic, but also the passage of time. An absolute brilliant detail that I saw was the lettering, displaying the tick-tock of the clock throughout all of these pages. There's a rigidness in these panels that show that everything that's happening is just kind of mundane. While there's explosions outside, Ashley, the protagonist, is somehow unfazed. This could be seen as an analogy for the real world, as we feel like every day another apocalypse is happening. There's always something going on and it always feels like the end of the world. But then we wake up the next morning and we're still here. If you're familiar with Slaughterhouse-Five by Kurt Vonnegut, there's a saying in that story that is, "so it goes." The saying is used as almost a catchphrase, but it's utilized to basically say life goes on, you can't stop it. This is going to be a running motif for the themes of this issue, which we'll talk about later, but I just really wanted to hit on this in the beginning beginning of the issue, basically establishing the tone. It's then revealed as Ashley leaves her apartment that this is just a movie that's shooting outside of her apartment building. There's something about this narration that I really wanted to talk about and has been itching at me since I first read it. The narration states, "Studios started using our neighborhood to film low-budget post-apocalypse movies once they realized how much they could save on sets. They say it doesn't take much to make this place look doomed. It's no way to live, but we weren't exactly consulted. In lieu of compensation or consent, they sometimes use us as unpaid extras. I guess people need content." You'd think that given everything going on, people would get sick of post-apocalyptic movies, but it's a popular genre. My dad used to say, "There's always someone making money on the end of the world." Personally, I can't watch them anymore. I personally read this as a condemnation of the film industry, wanting to capitalize on the suffering of others. As we move forward in the story, we see the real-world ramifications of this crisis event, specifically showing a woman that's talking to a police officer as she's crying because her husband is now stuck in time. While she is inconsolable, the police officer just calmly explains that this is something that happens. As time breaks down around them, we see how this affects normal, everyday people. The narration then goes on to explain the breakdown of time by stating, "Most call it the crisis. I don't really understand the science or anything. What it means for people like me is that strange, terrible things happen all the time now. You can get stuck in the worst moment of your life forever, get killed in your own apartment by your evil other dimensional doppelganger, or take a wrong turn into prehistory on your morning commute. It means everything's all mixed up. The distinctions between past, present, and future are confused. People are still born, grow old, and die, but not always in that order. Everyone experiences it differently, which makes things harder. For some people, it's like nothing changed. Others will never be the same." People were really starting to get worried until the politicians and celebrities explained. Even assuming these people are from the future, they said they're only from one of an infinite number of potential futures. The chance their future is also our future is roughly 1 in infinity. Big fat zero. See? Cheer up. There's absolutely nothing to worry about. We're already saved. There's a note that I made that I really want to highlight when talking about these pages in particular. The coloring decisions are absolutely fantastic and plays down just how bonkers these pages are. It's a utilization of highlighting our protagonists but dulling the background characters, so you can easily glance over some of the intricacies in the layout. We see everything from cavemen to people that escaped the future and are now stuck here. These people just walking the streets, and it's just treated like it's normal. But guess what? It's not. Also in these pages, we're introduced to the person that's on the cover of issue 1, and he's rambling about the end of times and things that we can come to expect with that. I personally felt like it was reminiscent of Rorschach at the beginning of Watchmen, having the sign that says the end is nigh, but this basically takes that concept and it ramps it up to 11. Now this first issue is just through the eyes of Ashley, but I think that we're gonna get more of an understanding of this character as we go on and see what his life story is like. Maybe he's at the heart of this crisis, or he's kind of like Psycho Pirate who's experienced all of this and he's just heralding it, but he's just too late, I guess. The note about the politicians and celebrities trying to calm everyone down, I thought was very interesting. I mean, really, it's an analogy for the real world, as people in power or people that have accumulated wealth attempt to calm the masses as it won't affect their personal capital. A volatile market leads to less capital accumulation. They don't want the public to freak out about this or that because it would hurt their bottom line. If people are freaking out, then their capital is worth less. It negatively impacts both politicians and celebrities because they have the means to invest their money. As we move forward in the story, Ashley arrives to her job, which she's worked for 10 years, and her boss says that they've never heard of her and she's not in the system. It's explained that her office is probably quote unquote in phase, so because of this time dilation, she has the day off. So utilizing her time off, she says that she's going to see if she can get her clock fixed that broke at the beginning of the issue. Because time is in flux, there's really no need for clocks anymore. So now people that are able to fix these clocks are seen as eccentric hobbyists and only fix the pieces if they find it interesting. When she's prompted by the shopkeeper to explain the piece, she begins talking about it and he's quickly bored, so he doesn't fix the clock. Ashley's inner monologue goes on to talk about the importance of this clock to her, showing how it's a sentimental representation of her parents who just ceased to exist. She sees the clock as the one thing left of her parents. She says that they just went missing and she tried to hire a private detective to find out what happened to them, and he gave her evidence showing that two people matching the description were around that area in the 1840s. And when she asked what happened to them, he just stated, "You don't want to know." Moving on in the story, we follow Ashley as she's walking down the street surrounded by Nazi imagery as well as Nazi soldiers, with the narration stating, "Next day or next week, it's impossible to say which, I wake up to a fascist nightmare, but I still gotta go to work." It's then revealed that it's actually just one of the movies outside of her apartment that are shooting a Nazi movie for some reason. But as she walks by the porta potties, she hears someone sobbing. She approaches to see if this person's okay, and it turns out that it's one of the actors that are within this Nazi movie. She attempts to check on him, and he says, "I'm fine. Really, I'm fine. It's silly. It's just a gig. The thing is, I'm Jewish. My grandmother survived but that's the job. You play the part they give you, right?" Beginning to sob once again and embracing Ashley with a hug. Now, when I read this issue for the first time, this scene kind of puzzled me, but I think that I have an explanation for it. It provides an additional layer of humanity to a person that's making accommodations and sacrifices to be successful. It shows this cognitive dissonance of being a Jewish man playing a Nazi. How far is a person willing to go to be successful while also damaging their own moral compass? As we move forward with Ashley, she then presents to a different person that's able to work on clocks. We only enter the scene when she's wrapping up her story, but he immediately identifies that that story was not true. At first, she denies the story being a lie, but he says that's the plot of Back to the Future. He tells her to leave and come back with something original, and on top of that, noting that he didn't buy her delivery for a minute. The next page then shows Ashley drinking throughout the night, displaying snapshots of her becoming increasingly intoxicated and doom scrolling as the night goes on. This shows a high level of character acting in the pencils, but also there's something that you missed. In the background of these pages, we also see a couple. At the beginning, they're on their first date, then engaged and having their first child, then with a marital spat, and the woman by herself in the booth. I think it's little moments like these that really humanize everyone within the universe and not just the protagonist. It lends to a level of authenticity for all of the characters within this story. Anyways, I just thought that was neat. As the story progresses, we then witness Ashley telling this over-exaggerated story regarding the clock, hoping that it's interesting and unique enough to get fixed. When she goes outside of her apartment, she then witnesses a Mad Max post-apocalyptic scenario with people accosting a man saying that they're going to eat him and that he's for lunch. It's then that he unveils that his shopping cart is full of guns, and he quickly takes out all of the people accosting him, with Ashley seemingly unenthused in the background. And it is, of course, a movie that's shooting outside of her apartment. The film crew discuss cutting because she did just walk into their shot, but because of her disheveled look, they say that she kind of fits in. They don't stop the take until she stops what she's doing to pet the dogs, effectively killing the realism of this shot. It's then that she stumbles upon police arresting the man that we saw earlier in that issue. When she tries tries to stick up for him and says that he has rights, same as them, the police say technically he doesn't. If he is who he says he is, he hasn't been born yet, ain't even been conceived, which means he's not people. When Ashley is adamant regarding this man's rights and sticking up for him, the police then assault her, with her falling to the ground and passing out. It's then that she wakes up in a prison cell surrounded by other people looking just as disheveled as she is. It's the next scene that I really want you to pay attention to. She's let out of the cell and presented with her belongings. Her belongings being her clock, which is now completely busted. She asks what happened and the person says it was like that when it got here. When she tries to contest this, the person says, that's your perspective, but from our perspective, it was like that when it got here. Okay, so I might be looking into this a little bit too much, sue me, but I saw the narrative through line of the clock story to have a little bit more nuance. Every scene with Ashley presenting this clock, she has to tell a story where people buy it, and I felt like this was analogous to how creatives have to pitch their stories. You can't have a story that's too bland. You can't have a story that's too derivative. And throughout the process of developing a story, you have the gatekeepers, whether it's the audience or the editors that approve the pitch. This through line read to me like a creative team that was frustrated with not being able to convey the story that they wanted to tell. But also, I might just be looking into it too much. Once she gets out of jail, she walks back to her apartment with people surrounding it and pointing up in the sky. People are screaming and panicking and running away, and she sees that it's just for the movie and getting reaction shots. When she's finally had enough, she just breaks down and falls to her knees and begins to cry. And that's when the director of the shoot asks who her agent is and wants her in the film. I felt like there could also be an underlying message regarding the movies being shot outside, where it's subjecting Ashley and everybody in the apartment building to the boy who cried wolf scenarios. In a world with real atrocities that are actually happening, it's difficult for her to rectify what is real and what is fake. And this comes to a culmination in the final scene. It shows Ashley waking up to booming outside of the apartment. And because she's experienced the movie people so many times, she thinks that this is just something fake that's happening. So she goes outside attempting to confront this director of the movie, and we see Ashley's perspective witnessing a scene that would really happen in a crisis event. At first, Ashley doesn't believe that this is anything more than a movie production. But when a neighbor rushes to her, trying to protect her from what's happening outside, he's immediately shot with a laser beam and killed right in front of her. It's only then that she realizes that this truly is the end of the world. And this is where the issue leaves off. Like a lot of Dennis Camp's other work, it's a dense read. I hope that this video has convinced you to at least read the first issue and hopefully jump on with issue 2. I just wanted to make this video because I couldn't stop thinking about it, and I've talked to so many of my friends who feel the same way. This issue alone is ripe for dissection and finding additional aspects that we can find further meaning in. Now, I don't think that I hit everything, and I might be looking too far into it, but I just wanted to show my appreciation for this first issue, and hopefully this made any sense to you. Okay, that's going to be enough out of me. If you like this video, go ahead and give it a like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. If you haven't, why haven't you? And if you want to get my videos early, access to the community Discord, or your name at the end of the video, you can subscribe to the newly formed Patreon, which is going to be linked in the pinned comment. And speaking of, thank you to Lord Edge, Jared Bird, Gianni Palumbo, and Owen Likes Comics. And don't forget, go read some comics, or else.